Rand, welcome to the program. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Glenn. I'm sorry I've got you tied up in knots.
You do, because I have real respect for you, and you are a constitutional expert. I mean, that's why I like you. And you've done something that I just don't understand, that I just didn't expect. I expected it from Rubio. I expected it from everybody, but I didn't expect it from you. And that's this birther nonsense with Ted Cruz, where you joked, and I accept the joke at first. It might be a good prime minister in Canada. Accept the joke. But then when you're pushed on it, you say, well, I'm not a constitutional expert. I don't know. Come on, man. Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
I think the reason why nobody really knows the answer is it's never been adjudicated. You know, we've never had a nominee or a president that wasn't born in the United States. I'm not saying that he isn't eligible. I'm simply saying Democrats, of course, will bring this up, and it will have to be adjudicated because it's never happened before.
Right. Well, okay, but McCain was done that. Barry Goldwater was.
Right, but the court decided in those cases that U.S. territories were part of the U.S., and
all right,
Canada,
so let me
frankly,
ask you
is not a U.S. territory.
So let me ask you this. Because we talk about things that the courts have adjudicated on, and we say the courts were wrong on that. You are, if you're not a constitutional scholar, if you're not a constitutional expert, then what the hell are we voting for you for? So just tell me. Well, hang on just a second. Hang on.
If we want to debate what a natural-born citizen is, you have to go back to either what the Founding Fathers said or the Constitutional Convention said. And the bottom line is it is ambiguous, and that when things are ambiguous,
none of the founders were natural born.
So let me just ask you this question. What does Rand Paul say? Not what the courts say. You've studied this out in your head enough. If you weren't running for president of the United States, and I understand the politics of it, I really do. But if you weren't running for president of the United States, come on, man. If we were just sitting in a room together, what would you say? Is he qualified to run for president or not?
If I had to guess, I would say the courts in all likelihood will say yes, but I would say that no court has ever decided what it means to be natural born with regard to eligibility of the president, whether or not being born outside of the U.S. means being naturally born in the U.S. I think it's an open question as far as the courts are concerned.
Okay. So, Rand, tonight you're skipping the kiddie table, which I applaud and think that is exactly the right move. And I think it's an insult that you're not at the big table. What do you think happened there, and why did you decide I'm not going?
You know, I think with 3 weeks to go, it's a mistake to accept an artificial designation that you are or are not in the first tier. We've raised about $25 million just last week in Iowa. We announced 1,000 precinct chairs, which is more than any other campaign has announced. If you follow us around the country, our crowds are as big as most of the other candidates in the first tier. In the most recent Des Moines Register poll, which is probably thought to be the most important Iowa poll, we scored ahead of two of the candidates that will be on the stage. We were in fifth place by ourselves, but really within the margin of error of third place. So, yeah, we think it's inappropriate and a mistake for the Republican Party to want to be smaller. Part of diversity is diversity of thought, and I'm the loudest voice on the stage saying the government shouldn't collect your phone records. I'm the loudest voice on the stage saying that we need to end the war on drugs, that it's had a disproportionate impact on minorities. And I'm also the loudest voice on the stage saying that our interventions in the Middle East and regime change has not been good for America, hasn't made us safer, and actually has led to the rise of radical Islam. So I think it's a mistake for them not to want to have me on the stage.
So tell me this, because I really don't understand it. I mean, this week we have been talking about, I kind of give up on America. I mean, I don't even know who the people are, especially the conservatives. I really thought that the two people that America would latch onto, the conservatives would latch onto, because quite honestly, you're the guys we prayed for. We prayed for people who understood the Constitution and would apply the Constitution to everything that they've done. But you see Donald Trump and his people who are attaching onto him are really becoming almost Obama supporters. They won't even listen to his past views, his views from last week. Yesterday he was asked about executive orders, and he said how crazy Obama was in executive orders, but he's going to do them too because he's going to do good executive orders.
You know,
and it doesn't seem to ring true.
I mean, of the candidates on the stage, Donald Trump could easily be the least conservative candidate on the stage. In fact, it's really unknown whether he's conservative at all. Most of his adult life, he's been a progressive Democrat, from supporting Harry Reid to Charlie Rangel. but also he supports things that are really abhorrent to most of us in the limited government movement. The idea that eminent domain can be used to take private property from one individual and give it to another private property owner is anathema to most of us. Most of us in the movement have followed the Supreme Court's decision in Kelo that allowed this to happen and have worried that the next step is for government to come after churches because they don't pay taxes and take it and give it to other private property owners. And this is something that Trump wholeheartedly supports, and it goes against everything that we believe in the limited government movement, the constitutional conservative movement. And so, yeah, I'm very disappointed that just because the voice is loud, that he's been able to dominate so much the microphone of television. But it's been a self-fulfilling prophecy in the polling, but I still don't believe it to be true. And this is a mistake. We're being led by the nose by polling, but as a conclusion to that, we are sort of precluding the possibilities of all the other candidates that could possibly win.
So, Rand, yesterday I had somebody on the air who said, Glenn, he was a Trump supporter, and he said, Glenn, I don't care about the Kelo case. He said, yes, does that matter? Does the Constitution matter? Yes, but our border is melting down. At the same time, I have heard somebody say, as I was arguing in your defense, somebody said, Glenn, Rand's just not connecting with people because he's talking about the things that don't matter. And I'm like, what are you talking? The Constitution is everything. If you don't base your decisions on the Constitution, we're just having a popularity contest. Speak to the people like the guy who called me yesterday who said, Glenn, the Kelo case, yeah, that's important, but not really because the border is on fire and we just have to take care of the border.
You know, private property is the foundation of capitalism, the foundation of our country, and the foundation of our prosperity. If we don't understand and protect private property from usurpation by government, then we're in danger of undermining the very fundamentals of the republic, the very fundamentals that make us the richest, freest, but also the most humanitarian nation in the history of man. So, no, I think it's probably a lot more important than even immigration, to tell you the truth. I do believe we have to have more border security. I do believe that our first line of defense against radical Islamists is actually in our border. And I think we have done a really bad job, and that ever since 9/11, I've been complaining that the people who came here legally, and that we have to have more scrutiny, we have to have more vetting process, and that it absolutely is not working at this moment.
What do you do? You're president of the United States, and we have 100,000 refugees in here, and they have been horribly vetted. What do you do on the borders and these people coming in, and what do you do about the people who are now already here?
Those who are here are going to have to be re-vetted. You know, we had 2 refugees not too long ago in Bowling Green, Kentucky, where I live, who said, the government says, they received the most extensive vetting. Well, one of them's fingerprints were on a bomb fragment, and then he proceeded to try to buy Stinger missiles to attack us in the U.S., so we're not doing a good enough job. They say 40% of those who are here illegally have overstayed their visas. Well, we have 150,000 students from the Middle East who visited each year. I'm not against that. Many of them come here and learn of our Western ways and values and go back and take those to their country. The problem is if 150,000 students, if 40% of them are overstaying their visas, I'm concerned. 2 of the hijackers were here on overstaying visas for students. 2 of the hijackers were here for a year on a multi-entry visa, and they were staying with an FBI informant, and nobody did anything about it. So we had all these breakdowns of normal police activity, and what did we do? We replaced it with a surveillance state where Americans were all asked to give up our freedom. And so we have to do a much better job at figuring out who's here. And until then, what I've said is stop it all for now and replace it with a system probably like global entry, where there'd be a background check on everybody who comes to visit, not just from the Middle East, but also from Europe, because there's a great danger now that Europeans, people who live in the European countries, have also been radicalized and will get on planes and come to see us.
Gallup poll, 2 years running, the number one problem with America. What is the number one problem in America? Used to be terrorism, used to be war, then it was jobs, then it was economic troubles. 2 years in a row now, the number one problem in America has been the government. Number one problem, according to U.S. citizens, the government.
That's exactly what Reagan said. Government is the problem, not the solution. And until we understand that the federal government is not going to save us, it's not going to make us better, and can't really do much of anything very well, we need to understand we have to limit how much power goes to Washington, limit how big the government is, and bring almost all of what's going on in Washington back to the states and the people.
But how do you connect with, because what people are starting to connect with is what Donald Trump says. Well, that's only because we have stupid people in Washington. We just need smart people in Washington.
The problem with a narcissist or someone who believes in narcissism is that they believe so much in themselves and their own powers that they say to you and they say to the public, just give me power. Give me more power and I'll make things better. But those of us who study history know that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, and that we can't allow more power to go, and that really our tradition, going all the way back to the field at Runnymede and talking about the Magna Carta, it's all been about trying to limit the power of the monarchy, limit the power of the government, prevent the monarch from dissolving the parliament, and then on to our country where we did not want to have a king. And this is why it's so important. The worst thing that President Obama has done to our country is the collapse of the separation of powers. The checks and balances are gone as the executive branch grows and grows and grows. Congressmen and senators are bystanders. They are almost of no importance as the president has grabbed up all the power. The most important and egregious and worst laws that are being written are all regulations being written by the executive branch now. And we're not doing a damn thing to stop him because they gave up the power of the purse. And this was really what annoys me.
He said at the State of the Union that he'd like to fight ISIS, but Congress won't let him do it. Congress won't give him the power to go and really fight ISIS.
There is some truth to the argument that Congress has abdicated their role as far as initiating or declaring war, and I've been arguing for over a year. In fact, I introduced a resolution in the Foreign Relations Committee to do just that, because I think it is Congress's role, and the Constitution was very clear that the initiation of war comes from Congress and not from the presidency. But he's disingenuous in sort of blaming it on us. He's liked the fact that we haven't limited his power. But Republicans just last week announced that they're not going to do anything on it because they don't want to hamstring the next president. So too many Republicans believe in unlimited executive power when it comes to war. And they complain when it's regulations, but they don't complain too much about war. They think anything to do with war, the president can have unilateral and complete power.
Rand, where are you going tonight?
I will be having a national town hall. We're going to tell people, turn your TV off. Come and listen to us directly. National town hall. People go to randpaul.com. They can get us. We'll be on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, you name it. We're going to be on it at 9 o'clock tonight.
I will tell you, I follow you on Facebook, and I have watched several of your speeches. I think it's amazing that the technology where you're allowed to be into the diners and the rooms and the, and all of these speeches that you've been given. And it also makes me realize how hard it is to be president of the United States, how much work it takes. Rand, thank you very much. We'll talk to you again. Good luck.
Thanks, Glenn.